America's influence is being tested on another front, currency. The de-dollarisation campaign. It's a real thing now. Even American banks can't ignore it. JP Morgan, it is one of America's leading banks. The bank has recognized that the domination of the dollar is under threat. The bank has put out an assessment. Listen to this. Some signs of de-dollarisation are emerging. This trend is likely to persist. That's what JP Morgan said. The bank believes there is no near-term threat to the greenback's domination. But there is a clear trend developing. Listen to this now. Again, this is from the same JP Morgan assessment. It says, de-dollarisation is evident in FX reserves where USD share has declined to a record. FX is foreign exchange reserves, the money that central banks around the world keep in their reserves. We have covered the reasons for that in the past as well. The international sanctions and the restrictions on trade. Countries are trying to find new ways. They want to work outside the current system, which is dominated by the dollar. Usually, that means trading in their native currencies. China has been pushing the yuan for bilateral trade. India, too, has an arrangement with Russia, the rupee-ruble mechanism. India and Russia are using their own currencies to make payments. Instead of the dollar or the euro, alternative currencies are just one aspect of this trend. Central banks are stocking up on gold too. 2022 was a record year for gold purchases. Last year, central banks bought over 1,000 metric tons of gold, the highest since record-keeping began in 1950. So which central banks are behind the surge in gold purchases? Again, some familiar names top the charts: Russia, China and India. Central banks in these countries are beefing up their gold stocks. But how big are these reserves? What do the numbers say? I have some data. Earlier, gold had an 11% share in central bank reserves. Now this number has shot up to 15%. So there's an increase, but the dollar still remains dominant. 58% of the reserves with central banks around the world are of the greenback. This is a 20-year low, and despite that, more than half of the reserves are in the dollar. What should we make of this? In the short term, the dollar is still king. But foundations are being laid for a shift. The BRICS is leading the charge on this front. BRICS is an alliance of nations, and I'm talking about Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. These are leading emerging economies, and they're thinking about making some bold moves. Recently, their foreign ministers met. They discussed the idea of a shared currency. The proposal was first floated by Russia. This happened during last year's BRICS summit. Now, the BRICS has sought some guidance.
We had one of the senior executives of the new development bank briefing our meeting on work that the bank has been doing, looking at the potential use of alternative currencies to the current internationally traded currencies, and looking at how we strengthen the arm of the BRICS Development Bank, and also ensure that we do not become victim to sanctions.
So serious deliberations are underway, but a shared currency is not an easy idea to execute. There's a need for direction and a roadmap. The specifics could be spelled out later this year, when leaders of BRICS nations meet in August for a summit. South Africa is playing host. We'll be tracking the developments for you. Donald Trump is an ambitious man. He was defeated by Joe Biden in 2020, but he wants to return to power. Donald Trump wants to be president of the United States again. But his road to glory is riddled with obstacles. Not direct obstacles that could prevent him from running for president, but legal troubles that could hurt his electoral fortunes. Could legal cases motivate Trump supporters to switch sides? Or will Trump be successful convincing Republican voters that he's a victim of political vendetta? Remember, Donald Trump is the leading candidate within the Republican Party. He has the support of close to 50% Republicans. Ron DeSantis comes second with just about 19% support. It's a one-man match right now. But could the legal cases turn the tables against Trump? Our next report gets you the answers.
Can a criminal become the president of the United States of America? Surprisingly, yes. As per the law, there's no stopping a convicted person from running for the White House. So if Donald Trump were to be jailed in any of the criminal cases going on against him, he could still become president. But this story is not about him becoming president after being convicted of crimes. It's about Trump's growing legal troubles. And there's no doubt, Trump's mountain of legal challenges is only getting bigger. Here's the latest one. United States prosecutors have informed Trump's lawyers that he is the target of a probe. Which probe? The one looking into the saga of classified documents being found at Trump's Florida residence. Among all the legal battles that Trump finds himself in, the one relating to the classified documents is the most severe. Expectedly, Trump didn't like the news, so he did what he knows best. He took to his social media platform to vent. Here's what he said on Truth Social. "No one has told me I'm being indicted, and I shouldn't be because I've done nothing wrong." Reports say the special counsel investigating Trump could announce possible criminal charges in the coming days or weeks. This is standard practice. The Justice Department generally informs all of its targets that they are being looked into. This gives them a chance to prepare the defense. Also, this doesn't necessarily mean that Trump will be charged, but the odds certainly seem stacked against him. The Justice Department is apparently in possession of an audio recording, because Trump can allegedly be heard acknowledging that he kept a classified Pentagon document, a document which talks about a potential attack on Iran. There's more. Last year, the FBI seized some 11,000 documents from Trump's residence, Mar-a-Lago. About 100 of these documents were termed classified, and some were even labeled top secret. So now Trump is in a precarious situation. He could face a host of charges, including obstruction of justice and perhaps even under the stringent Espionage Act. And the former president isn't helping his case with his remarks. In a recent CNN town hall, Trump declared, "I took the documents, I'm allowed to, I have the absolute right to do whatever I want with them." Apart from the battle over documents, Trump faces a number of other criminal investigations. These relate to Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, his role in the storming of the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and also his attempt to overturn Joe Biden's election victory in the state of Georgia. Trump has already made history in US courts, but not the way he would have liked. In April, he became the first former president to face criminal charges. A Manhattan district attorney charged Donald Trump with 34 counts of felony. These relate to him falsifying business records. Trump allegedly made hush money payments to a porn star to buy her silence.
Safely and peacefully.
All of this might make you think Donald Trump can't win the US presidency again. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. After all, this is a man who has defied odds in the past, most notably with his 2016 election victory. Even now, Trump is the leading contender within the Republican Party by a wide margin. Almost 49% GOP primary voters back Donald Trump. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is a distant second with just 90% support. Meanwhile, Mike Pence has 5% backing, while Nikki Haley just 4%. In fact, the growing number of contenders are giving a sure shot edge to Trump to win the Republican ticket. So far, his legal troubles seem to have no impact on his political fortunes. In fact, Trump is hoping that these cases galvanize his support base. The road to the White House for Trump is one littered with lawsuits. Will he actually reach his destination? We will have to wait until November next year to find out.
North America is burning. Millions of acres of land in Canada has been reduced to ashes. Canada is struggling to control wildfires that have now spread across the country. And these wildfires are the worst Canada has ever seen. So the impact has been quite catastrophic, not just for Canada, but also its southern neighbor and close friend, the United States. Cities in the US have been turned into smoke chambers. Perhaps the worst hit is the world's Big Apple, New York City. It is now one of the most polluted cities in the world. The air quality in New York is now more hazardous than in New Delhi. USA's biggest cities suddenly find themselves breathing the proverbial third world air. Here's a report.
Americans find themselves in a hazardous situation, quite literally, because the air has been polluted like never before. New York City now has the world's most polluted air. Take a look at this. These are not scenes from some apocalyptic film. This is what New York City looks like. Now imagine living in this city. If you're watching this report from Delhi, you know what breathing this air feels like. But at least the air in Delhi doesn't turn orange. This is what the George Washington Bridge looks like now, or whatever part of it is still visible. For somebody who doesn't have the proper context, you'd probably think New York has been the victim of an unprecedented sandstorm. Or worse, been struck by a biological weapon that has made the air toxic. Now, while New York and many other American cities do look like apocalyptic ghost towns, life must go on. With all necessary precautions, of course.
I've been advising people where possible, stay inside. Even though the air outside will ultimately find its way inside, the levels will be reduced. Also, this is not the time to be playing tennis or jogging or getting ready for a marathon. Go easy on your lungs. Don't do anything that requires deep, heavy breathing. Maybe better to walk versus bicycle if you can, just to keep things light.
Go easy on your lungs. That's the message from authorities. Just to give you an idea of how things spiraled out of control in a matter of days, on June 3rd, the air quality index of New York was 15. Now it's hovering anywhere between 350 to 500. And that's over 56 times higher than the World Health Organization's safety limit. You'd think we're singling New York out, but this is not the case. After all, smoke coming out of Canada is hovering over northeastern US and the Midwest. Places like Wisconsin, Syracuse, and Minnesota haven't been spared either. Let's talk about Canada for a bit. The situation in this North American country is dire. Canada is battling its severest wildfire season on record. Over 8.2 million acres of land have already been burned. At this very moment, there are about 400 active wildfires still raging in Canada. And more than a half of them have been declared out of control. Over 12,700 square miles of forest and land has been destroyed. It's the sheer scale of the crisis in Canada that's sending ripple waves across the American continent. Smoke emanating from wildfires can be very toxic. This is due to the presence of particles called PM2.5. Any particles with a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers fits this category. Do you know why these particles are dangerous? Because they're able to get past our natural defenses. These are small enough to enter our lungs from where they can start flowing in the bloodstream. These particles can cause irritation in the eyes, nose, throat, and lungs. But they can also trigger more severe conditions like asthma attacks. Breathing such air can have a number of detrimental effects. But Americans can breathe easy knowing that this is a temporary situation and not an all-year-round phenomenon. The same can't be said for many Asian cities.
Annecy. It's an idyllic town in the south of France, nicknamed the Pearl of the French Alps. But today, the town woke up to a horrific incident, a mass stabbing attack. 6 victims, including 4 children. The victims are as young as 3 years old. That's the latest. So let's talk about how the attack took place. It was around 9:45 a.m. local time. Children were playing at a playground, one located near the town's famous lake. This is when a man armed with a knife entered this playground. Disclaimer alert, the details get gory from here. He began to stab a group of children as young as 3. Witnesses describe people running, crying, panicking.
Now it will take time until parents again take their children to playgrounds, since I think the trauma will stay forever in the town of Annecy. Because this is the first time this has ever happened here, as far as I know. But now things like this will happen again in places that we don't expect. That's what will happen. Everyone expects this to happen in big cities like Marseille, Paris, or Lyon. But now the target will be places where no one expects it, to put fear into people.
I would like to reiterate how terrified we are as people of Annecy, as French people, at this appalling attack on young children under the age of 2, just a few years old, in the heart of Annecy, in the historic Pacquiao Garden. It was an attack on humanity that took place this morning, an attack on our very soul, where young children playing outside school hours were attacked by an individual.
He then ran from that scene, attacking another man who was walking nearby. It was at this point that the police intervened. They quickly overpowered him. Reports suggest he was shot in the legs. Soon, he was arrested at the scene. In fact, the Interior Minister tweeted about the arrest, lauding the rapid reaction of security forces. Police have confirmed that the man is a 31-year-old Syrian who had refugee status in Sweden. The mayor of Annecy called it an appalling attack. French President Emmanuel Macron has denounced the stabbing on Twitter, calling it an act of absolute cowardice. The National Parliament too observed a minute's silence for the victims. For the town of Annecy, it was a moment of shock, a moment of horror. This is a town people go to a vacation. Many of them can't even imagine such an incident. But France is no stranger to these attacks. 2015, the attack on the Charlie Hebdo magazine, 12 people killed. 2015 again, the Paris attacks, the deadliest attacks in the history of France. 130 people killed. 2016, the Bastille Day attacks in Nice, 84 people killed. 2017 stabbing incident in Marseille, 2 women killed. 2020, another attack in a Paris suburb. The beheading of a teacher in broad daylight. 2022, a shooting incident in Paris, 3 killed, 3 others injured. And lastly, in January of 2023, another stabbing incident, that too at a Paris station. I know the list sounds long, almost never ending, but this is one of France's biggest problems right now. Islamist attacks and threats they can't counter. Homegrown terrorism is a huge worry for France, one that's fueling anti-migration sentiments in the country. Many of these attackers belong to migrant communities or those seeking asylum in the country. Some of them were French citizens but felt they were excluded from the French society. Experts have said it is unfair to blame immigration for the attacks. But for French right wing, this has been the perfect lightning rod. In fact, far-right leader Marine Le Pen blamed African migrants for crime in France. She called them a threat to French civilization. And a majority of France's population agrees. Data suggests immigrants account for a little over 10% of the population, around 7 million people. But the debate around them is far outsized. In fact, the government recently brought in a controversial bill, one that tries to deal with anti-immigration. The bill says it aims to control immigration while improving integration. But what it allows is greater deportation, especially for foreigners who commit crimes. Many slam it as racist. aiming to criminalize immigrants. It is still not sure how France will react to this attack, but it may reignite the anti-immigration debate. The attack is currently not being linked to terrorism. The French police are yet to confirm anything, and the details are still trickling in. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. India has successfully tested a new generation ballistic missile. It's called Agni Prime. Meanwhile, wildfires in Canada are severely impacting parts of the United States. New Yorkers woke up to a hazy day that looked like a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. And the Kilauea volcano erupted in Hawaii. This is one of the world's most active volcanoes. And finally, what makes June 8th significant? On this day in 1948, Air India's first international flight took off. It took off from erstwhile Bombay for London via Cairo and Geneva. Air India International came into being after industrialist J.R.D. Tata suggested that the Indian government should sponsor an international airline. We leave you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.